Welcome to COMANDOLIN. Today, part 2 of our Introduction to Blues Mandolin series. Part 1, we looked at a few basic shuffle patterns. And today in part 2, we're going to look at kind of what to do with those shuffle patterns. We're going to look at what the standard 12-bar blues progression is, that pretty much the whole genre is built around. And then a couple of variations on that, things you can throw in. And then the second half, make sure you stick around for the second half of the video because we're going to talk about the number one most useful, most important, most recognizable, however you want to say it, blues mandolin lick that you'll need. It can be used as an intro in the middle of the songs, as a lick to finish up with. I mean, it's the one, if you know one lick, you'll need this one. So stick around for that. We're going to talk progressions, and we're going to talk about that lick. And of course, a little business before we get going. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below. COMANDOLIN, doing a lot of these tutorials and just reviews and talking about mandolins and just having a lot of fun. Of course, I have a PayPal thing that I'll put down at the bottom. And if you're getting stuff out of these lessons and all, and want to kick the channel $1 or $2, which would be greatly appreciated. And of course, I have the COMANDOLIN store for t-shirts and stickers and hoodies and stuff. But all right, let's take a look at some more blues mandolin here. All right, so before we start playing, we have to know about the 12-bar blues and the standard blues progression that literally is the basis of the whole genre, and for that matter, several genres. So it's a good thing to have under the belt. And it's based around, you may or may not have heard the term, but it's called a 1-4-5 chord progression. What does that mean? Super easy. Whatever your key you're in, and we're going to be doing G and all the things today. So if you're in G, that's 1. You just start there and you just count up. G, A, B, C. There's 4. My 4 chord is a C, and then 5. Count up to D. So it's G, C, and D, 1, 4, and 5 respectively. And there's a sequence that I'm getting ready to show you here that they all follow as it lays out here. And once you know how to count that, you can do any key. If you're in a jam session with people you've never met in your life and they say blues in A, you'll know A, B, C, D is your 4, E is your 5. You'll know A, D, and E, and you'll know these changes we're getting ready to talk about. So any key, you just count it. 1, 4, 5. But today we're talking the key of G because in a mandolin that's our lowest root note. If you're playing guitar, you're probably doing a lot of E. Then you would have E, F, G, A, and B, and you would have E, A, and B would be your chords. But today we're talking in G, and let me show you the progression we're going to do here. All right, we turn now to our high-tech COMANDOLIN graphics animation studio because this is a lot easier to see than explain. So here's the basic progression. You're going to start with your 1 chord, which in this case is the G. You go through 4 measures, 4 bars of that chord. So it's going to be 4 bars of G. And then you're going to go to your 4 chord, which in this case is C, and you're going to go 2 bars. And then you're going to go back to the 1 chord, back to the G, for 2 bars. This will all sound extremely familiar to the ear as soon as we start playing it. This is just so you know what's going on, because you'll always know what's going to happen. But I digress. Back to the 1 chord 2 times. Then you go to the 5, which is the D, for 1 measure. To the 4, just back down to the C for 1 measure. And then back on your home chord, your root G. Now here's where at the end of the thing there's various little endings, variations, and things we can do that I'll show you. But this is the basic pattern. 4 times through the 1 chord, 2 times through the 4, back to the 1, 1 time through the 5, 1 time through the 4, and land back on the root chord, the G. Now let's see how this sounds. All right, so we're just going to take one of our patterns from last week and plug it into that chord progression. And we're going to pick this one for a couple reasons. It's real easy, real familiar, and for our purposes here today, it counts out perfectly because one time through is one bar, one measure. So it's real easy to count. So we're going to start off doing that 4 times. And when it comes time to go to the 4 chord, the C, we're going to go up to the 5th fret, do it twice, back down twice. When it comes time for the 5, we'll go up here to the 7th chord 1 time. We'll come down here to the C 1 time, and then we'll finish back off here twice. And so here's what that sounds like. So 1, 2, 3, 4, up here, 1, 2, back, 2, then 1, 1, and 2, and we'll left down here to the last one. Then we'll just start over in its most basic form here. Alright, so there's our basic 12 bar as it's laid out. Most basic 12 bar in G. Now there's a couple little variations that we can talk about here. But the first one is, and I mentioned this in the last video too, but it's a real easy way to, because sometimes you're coming off this 5 chord and you don't want to just come down here and sit. What you're looking for, and what we call it, is a turnaround. Something that will kind of kick you back to the beginning here. Something that sounds like this. And then it would let you start over again. A simple 3-note phrase. 5th, 6 on the G string, and technically you're just going to that note, the 7th of the D string, but most of the time I would just hit that as an open D so it can ring out. So that's a handy way. So you're coming off this. So that's a real handy way to go about it. Now here's a quick variation. Now looking back at our progression here, the one variation that you see a decent amount is this bar right here, the second bar as you get going. Sometimes, instead of just sitting on the 1 chord for 4 times all the way through, sometimes they'll go from the 1 to the 4 for 1 bar, and then everything else exactly the same. So sometimes it goes from 1 to the 4, and then back to the 1 for 2, and then everything else just carry on. Now they call it a quick change progression. If you're ever in a jam session and someone says, you know, quick change in G, you'll know they're just going to go from the G right to the C and then back to the G. So don't let it surprise you, but you'll know it's coming because it's a standard thing once people know this. So here, let's hear what this sounds like now. All right, well, what does that sound like? Again, it's going to be a very familiar sound. It's going to be 1 bar of the 4 chord, of the 1, up here to the 4 chord. Well, here, I won't talk about it. I'll just do it. It sounds like this. Here's the 1 chord. Up here. Everything else exactly the same. 2. And here's the 5 chord. 4 chord. change, blues progression in G. Now, something I like to do a lot is I throw in a little walk up. It's really fun to walk up into that 4 chord. In this case, walking up from the G up to the C in the 5th fret. What I like to do is I throw in a little, which is just simply a chromatic 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I like to just throw that in between. It just adds such a little step up effect. Yeah, that's a handy little thing to have. Super easy, just 3 notes. But such a great way to lift everything up as you're going back into C. And for that matter, I guess you don't hear it walk down too much. Never mind about that. But walking up is a great thing. All right, thanks for sticking with me this far. Let's take a look here at part 2. The most important, I mean the first blues lick we need to learn here. Absolute standard of the genre. Can be used as an intro, an outro on the way out of the song, or as a great turnaround in the middle, and it'll be instantly recognizable. So this is the first one we need to get under our belt here, and let's check it out. Little guy. So the great thing about this lick, just depending on how we end it, pretty much determines its use. We can do a couple things with it. But here, let me show you the basic part of it here. It's this. Just going to start on the 5th fret of the A, and keeping your finger here on the 3rd fret, the G, there on the high E string. So keep that there, and we're going to take this one, and that note is just going to move from here to here to here to here. So I'm just going to go 5th to the 3rd and back to the 5th. So do that little sequence. And this moves down to the 4th. Do that sequence again. Now just take your finger, bar the 3rd fret. And again, you know, just going A, G, and then last, finish on a G chord there. Just normal. So. Now what happens here pretty much determines how to use it, because you can go up to your 5 chord, in this case the D7, and hear how it kind of wants to keep going. It's kind of an intro. It's like, because here comes more. You know, more stuff's going to happen. Or you can take the same little lick and finish on the G. Instead of going to the D7, you could go to the G7. Or even the G major. Nah, you probably won't want to do major. It doesn't sound very bluesy. I like to do these 7th chords in these reverse triangle patterns. Like the D7 is 5th, 4th on the D, whoops, and then 5th on the A. So you get this little reverse triangle. And it's real nice. You can come into it from a step down or from a step up and slide down to it like that, which is real common. Or you could start a fret below and come up to it. And then start into your G shuffle patterns. Or, like we say, we can do it at the end of the song. And just move down into that G7, which is, 3rd, 2nd here, and 3rd here. But start everything up one and move down to it. Or I suppose you could you slide up? Sure you could. Although down's probably more common, but it's just, things to experiment with. It's all just stuff you can mix in. So you can just start combining some of these elements, All right, thanks for joining me today for part 2 of our introduction to blues mandolin. Again today, just looking at the basic 12-bar blues progression, a couple little variations, a couple little turnarounds, just little things we can do. Just stuff to be messing with and be playing as we go. Next time we'll probably look at start looking at the blues scale and how we can start incorporating some leads and melodies into all this. But have fun playing with this for a little bit. And as always, of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below. COMANDOLIN, do a lot of these tutorials and reviews and stuff, and lots of fun stuff on the way. So hope this was fun, and I will see you next time.